November 25th, 2010. Brother Sergio and Juan Guitron hang out with friends at their residence on Ocean Mist Court in Ruskin, Florida. It has been a long night of playing cards, drinking, and smoking. A dark van slows to a halt near the driveway as the friends on the porch enjoy their Thanksgiving get-together. Then the eerily dark street is illuminated by a van's interior light as a man gets out carrying a long rifle. He hastily rushes towards the porch. "Lay on the ground. Get your IDs out." When the men don't cooperate fast enough, the man gets louder. "Get your IDs out and get on the fucking ground." The men start to cooperate by getting on their knees. Juan Guitron makes the fatal mistake of telling the guy with the rifle to calm down. He responds, "You chill out." The first shot pierces the calm of the early morning hours, and two more follow. Within minutes, Juan and Sergio are fatally shot, and four others are seriously wounded. The gunman will escape into the night. The events that took place during the early morning hours of November the 25th, 2010 will leave a lasting impact on the victims and their families, while the legal battle wages on even today. Was Ruskin, Florida's ice cream man a violent vigilante seeking revenge after his near-fatal shooting, or a scapegoat for Florida law enforcement? The saga began on January 23rd, 2010. Michael Keetley has been selling ice cream in the Ruskin, Sun City Center area of Florida after being laid off as an airplane mechanic for Delta Airlines. An economic downturn meant airlines weren't hiring, so Michael returned home to Florida and decided to sell ice cream. He bought a van, tore off the roof, and extended it using sheet metal so he could stand up inside. Since he'd been serving the children of migrant farm workers in Wamama for a while, many of them knew him by name. The ice cream man was often described as a nice guy who sold ice creams for $1 or less to accommodate his customers' budgets, and often gave snacks to the kids for free. On other occasions, he would agree to wait for the money until the customer got paid. On January 23rd of 2010, around 6:30 p.m., Keetley had bankrolled a total of $12 before deciding to head home before dark. He turned the vehicle into Old US Highway 41 and noticed a car in his rearview mirror. He pulled to the side of the highway, ready to sell ice cream to a customer he had missed earlier in the day. Soon, a heavy-set girl was pleading with Michael for a free ice cream. He relents and goes to the cooler to get one. Then, he found himself cornered by two men in ski masks. One man put a gun in Michael's face. He desperately attempted to defuse the situation by giving them the $12 he had. The men demanded that he turn around. Michael refused, believing he would be shot in the back of the head. When the masked men ignored his cash box, Michael knew they were out for blood. The guns were unloaded as the bullets ripped through Michael Keetley's defenseless body. The masked men fled the scene, leaving Michael to bleed out, but his will to survive was too strong. He pulled himself into the driver's seat and managed to use his mangled right arm to drive to a nearby residence for help. As for his left arm, it was useless, unable to move. Keetley was rushed to the hospital where he underwent multiple surgeries. The day after the shooting, he had surgery to repair the fractured fingers on his left hand and a humerus fracture to his right arm. Michael was released into the care of his parents in February of 2010, although he was never able to live alone again. He slept in a medical bed and was so badly injured that his mother had to wipe him when he used the restroom. It was a long, grueling recovery. Even then, Michael Keetley would never fully recover mentally or physically from the near-fatal robbery. The events that occurred between Michael Keetley's shooting and the double murder mass shooting at 604 Ocean Mist Court are contested. Prosecutors claim Michael Keetley attempted to avenge his near-fatal shooting by hunting down and shooting 6 men. Michael's defense attorney, Leanne Gowdy, disputed the claim, arguing that her client was far too injured to carry out the meticulous shooting. The events of the decade-long saga will be laid bare ahead. In the early morning hours of Thanksgiving 2010, Sergio Guitron, Juan Guitron, Jose Rodriguez, Daniel Beltran, Gonzalo Guevara, and Richard Cantu were hanging out at 604 Ocean Mist in Ruskin, Florida. The friends had been playing cards, shooting the breeze, and drinking Coronas. Shortly after 2 a.m., a dark van drove past the house and continued on Ocean Mist Court. Most of the men didn't realize that the van had returned and parked near the sidewalk until the interior light illuminated the dark street as someone opened the door and got out. Once they noticed the man's silhouette speed walking toward the porch, they rushed to hide the drugs they had been using earlier that night. The white letters on the stranger's shirt spelled sheriff, so the men were ready to cooperate and avoid spending Thanksgiving in a jail cell. As he got closer, they could see that he was carrying a dark-colored rifle with a long barrel like a 12-gauge shotgun. The stranger promptly asked for their IDs. When they didn't move quickly enough, he got louder. He also ordered them to get down on the ground while pumping the gun in his hands. The men tried to retrieve their identifications as quickly as they could, but Juan Guitron had left his in his vehicle. When he asked the gunman if he could get it from the car nearby, he was cursed and told to get on the ground again. Believing he was dealing with a member of law enforcement, Juan made the fatal mistake of telling the stranger to calm down. The gunman raised the rifle, said, "You chill out," and shot Guitron twice in the chest. Juan hit the ground, and the gunman wasted no time firing another round. The stranger walked along the porch, meticulously shooting the men from right to left. He turned his attention to Richard Cantu, placing the rifle barrel on the back of his head. Cantu wiggled around as he was shot, but the bullet still entered the back of his head and exited through the top. As desperation set in, Daniel Beltran grabbed a nearby beer bottle and tried to use it to hit the man with the gun. Instead, the bullet ripped through his right hip, causing him to crash to the porch. Soon, Daniel felt a foot on his back and heard the shotgun being pumped once again. He desperately squirmed for his life until the gunman removed his foot. Nail-free, Daniel attempted to crawl away as the gunman deliberately stalked him. As Daniel crawled for his life, the gunman pumped his rifle and fired again. He continued until Daniel had fallen over the railing and forced his body into the darkness around the corner of the trailer. And then he heard 4 more gunshots. The gunman retreated to his van and disappeared into the night, leaving 2 men fatally injured and 4 other men changed forever. Immediately after the incident, some were taken away in body bags, while others were rushed to the hospital. Roughly 14 hours later, a text message was delivered to people all over Florida and even to people in Texas. The text message would help break the case for detectives and help them pinpoint their primary suspect, Michael Keetley. Once Detective Lugo heard about the text message, he had Keetley in his crosshairs, and an arrest would come in a matter of days. On December the 2nd, 2010, Michael Keetley would be arrested and charged with 4 counts of attempted murder and 2 counts of first-degree murder. His parents would spend most of their retirement savings paying their son's private attorneys. The case would not move forward for many years, with Keetley being declared indigent in November 2014. Prosecutors were going to seek the death penalty, and the decision was reaffirmed by Andrew Warren when he took over as Hillsborough County State's Attorney in late 2016. Keetley would sit in jail from December the 2nd, 2010, and wait for his trial to begin in February 2020. On February the 5th, a jury of 9 women, 3 men, and 3 female alternates was finally seated. Opening statements took place the following day. By this time, the death penalty was dropped, and Keetley was facing life in prison. The prosecution's case primarily relied on circumstantial evidence, since there wasn't much in the way of forensics linking Keetley to the crime. During the trial, prosecutors spun a tale of vengeance and vigilantism for the jury. They argued that Keetley had attempted to hunt down the men who shot him in his ice cream truck, but ultimately got the wrong men. After his hospitalization, Keetley returned home and tried to find out who was responsible for his near-fatal shooting. The jury heard from multiple state witnesses who said Michael regularly questioned people about possible suspects. During the first day of testimony, 4 witnesses testified that Keetley used his ice cream truck to seek out leads and even offered a reward of $25,000 at one time. Most had seen the money collection jars in local convenience stores taking up money for Keetley and his medical bills. Others had seen the reward flyers offering money to anyone who had information about Keetley's would-be killers. Initially, Keetley believed the robbers were African American, but prosecutors presented evidence suggesting that he had changed his theory after the investigation and thought it was Hispanic men. Prosecutors used witnesses to allege that Keetley eventually came across the nickname Creeper, and he became the primary suspect. A notebook in Michael's house had Creeper's real name, Omar Bailon, and address written on it. A fingerprint on the notebook confirmed that Michael likely wrote the name and address, although the defense never disputed it. Computer forensics on a laptop found in the residence of Michael's parents revealed someone had searched for ocean mist multiple times. The men were shot at 604 Ocean Mist Court, while Creeper lived at 507 Ocean Mist Court. Detective Jose Lugo met with shooting victim Gonzalo Guevara at the hospital to show him a photo lineup with Michael's picture. Lugo testified that Gonzalo started shaking, became teary-eyed, and the medical equipment began beeping when he saw Keetley's photograph. Once Gonzalo identified Michael as the shooter, it was likely enough for Lugo to confirm he had the right man. Around November the 28th, 2010, Michael Keetley was pulled over during a traffic stop, so detectives decided to use the opportunity to question their primary suspect. When asked about his whereabouts on the night before Thanksgiving, Michael claimed he went to a party where he sang karaoke before returning home around 12:30. When he got home, his parents were just settling down for the night. Michael was asked about the name Creeper, but he replied that he had never heard it. When asked again, his response was the same. Instead, Michael said the two names he kept hearing were Bubba and Jesse. While he was initially mad about the robbery and shooting, he realized he couldn't live his whole life grudging. He'd go on to say that the people responsible for shooting him could have been shot by a clerk during another robbery, or they might have been locked behind bars already. He just didn't know. Detective Lugo asked if he could have a recent picture of him. Michael quickly refused the request. Little did Michael know, police were already working to secure a warrant for the home of his parents, and they would have it before the interview concluded. When authorities searched the Keetley property, they found an array of weaponry, such as a .22 caliber rifle, shotgun, Taurus .45 caliber handgun, and a 100 round ammo drum. Outside, authorities found a makeshift shooting range where Keetley and others had been shooting old cars. Later, detectives would receive a Victoria's Secret bag filled with shell casings from Wesley Smith and Carmen Smith, who had previously shot guns with Keetley on the property. After the group had shot guns that day, Wesley and Carmen picked up the casings and put them in the bag. Once they returned home, they carelessly stashed it in their shed. When those casings were tested, some were consistent with those fired at 604 Ocean Mist. 45 shell casings were also found in a bullet-riddled minivan used as a target. Keetley admitted to having a Glock 45, although investigators never found it. Detectives also believed that the defendant had modified the gun with an aftermarket barrel that made it look like a shotgun, since the victim said they saw a long rifle. Although it was a circumstantial case, investigators and prosecutors felt it was enough to lock Keetley away for the rest of his life. They theorized that Michael Keetley was convinced that Omar Creeper Bailon was responsible for his shooting and robbery. As a result, he went to Ocean Mist Court in the early morning hours of Thanksgiving, stopped at the wrong address, and shot and killed the wrong people. His defense team would be ready to tear holes in the prosecution's case in hopes of sending Michael Keetley home a free man. When Michael Keetley went on trial in February of 2010, defense attorney Leanne Gowdy would skillfully defend her client and dismantle the state's case piece by piece. The defense team had an answer for everything. While Keetley would not take the stand, he would be one of the most important indicators of his innocence. Throughout the trial, Gowdy repeatedly emphasized the fact that nobody immediately identified Keetley after the shooting. It was a dark street with only the porch light illuminating the area. Most of the victims had seen Michael several times because he regularly sold ice cream in the area, but they did not immediately identify him after the shooting. Shooting survivor Daniel Beltran was unable to identify Keetley when he was shown pictures in the hospital. He saw the man wearing a black shirt with sheriff written in white letters across the center. According to his testimony, he also saw the man wearing black rimmed clear glasses and a badge around his neck. Ramon Galan said he was preparing to leave 604 Ocean Miss Court when he turned around and saw a silhouette of someone rushing towards them. He confirmed to the jury that he was unable to see the suspect's hair color or race because the area was so dark. Victim Richard Cantu was severely injured in the shooting and had no memory of what happened that night. Jose Rodriguez testified that he saw a white man with a gun, although he couldn't see much because it was so dark. During cross-examination, he said the van was playing loud rap music and the shooter had a short-barreled long gun or shotgun in one hand. Jose claimed the man responsible had big black geeky glasses and he didn't recognize him from anywhere. Initially, Jose said he had never seen the man in his life. That would change when he received the text message accusing the ice cream man of being the shooter. His friend Juan Hernandez showed him the picture and he immediately said the ice cream man did it. He called Detective Lugo and told him as well. Gonzalo Guevara helped put Michael Keetley behind bars when he identified his picture in a photo array while in the hospital. The defense was able to poke holes in that evidence as well. When Lugo tried to speak to Gonzalo at St. Joseph's Hospital, he was told by a nurse that it wouldn't be a good idea because the patient was hallucinating on medications. By that point, Gonzalo's family and friends were already there. Lugo checked on him before telling him to remember his name because he's the lead detective and he'll come back to talk to him tomorrow. When Lugo returned to the station, the higher-ups made it clear that they were not happy with his decision. They wanted him to show the photos to Gonzalo that day. When the detective returned to see Gonzalo the following day, he made a fatal mistake. Gonzalo would eventually identify Michael as the shooter, although the paperwork would tell a different story. Defense attorney Leanne Gowdy pointed out that the paperwork initially had a number 4, which was not Michael Keetley. It was changed to number 3 to match Keetley's picture. Detective Lugo blamed himself for the mix-up, saying he didn't have the photos numbered and only numbered them after showing them to Gonzalo. The defense made sure that the jury knew that the standard operating procedure said the photos had to be numbered first, and Lugo had done this numerous times. In other words, the defense suggested that it might not have been a simple mistake. Furthermore, the defense argued that Gonzalo's family and friends showed him the text message about Michael since his sister had received it too. As a result, Gonzalo's memory was tainted when he said Michael was the shooter. Another issue for the prosecution was the fact that the victims had been partying for many hours before the shooting. Most people there that night had drunk countless beers, smoked several blunts, and snorted a handful of cocaine bumps. The defense theorized that they were likely impaired enough to hurt their judgment and memory. By the end of the night, the group had gone through 52 to 60 long-neck Corona beers. The defense would call 7 witnesses over 2 days, with the most important being Dr. David Halpern, the surgeon who treated Michael after the shooting. The victims consistently said the gunman had a gun with a long rifle and racked the slide with each shot. More importantly, the survivors never mentioned anything about the shooter having trouble racking or shooting the gun. Michael's defense team believed it would have been too difficult for Michael to pull off this feat, since there were maybe 15 shots in a span of a minute or two. The defense told the jury that Michael's mother had to wipe him when he used the bathroom, and some witnesses said he couldn't use his hands. Michael looked bad, and he had a noticeable limp, while the victims never noticed the limp, and the shooter ran back to his van. Halpern was serving as the chief of plastic surgery at Tampa General Hospital and operated on Michael in January, March, and June. He explained that Michael had damage to the radial nerve in his right arm, and they had to wait to see if time would return feeling and motion to the hand. They didn't know if he would ever be able to open or close his hand or make a fist. Michael had several electromyography tests to check his progress. The last test was conducted just 24 days before the shooting on November the 1st. The results showed that there had been no recovery since the prior test in June. Defense attorney Leanne Gowdy demonstrated to the jury how it would be difficult for Michael to open and close his fingers during her opening statement. The surgeon said it would be extremely unlikely that Michael would be able to lift, hold, or fire a gun on Thanksgiving of 2010. On cross, prosecutors got him to admit that he could have learned to shoot with his left hand. Finally, the defense tried to point a finger at other possible suspects, including local gang members. Defense attorneys wanted jurors to believe that many of the victims were affiliated with gangs, and there was gang graffiti on buildings in the Ocean Mist area. Could it have been a gang hit? When Sergio, Gonzalo, and Walter left that night to buy cocaine, they could have been followed by would-be robbers. The defense wanted anyone besides Michael Keetley to be the culprit in the eyes of the jurors. By the time the defense had rested its case, the prosecution needed a Hail Mary to put Michael away for life. On the 10th day of the trial, the defense rested its case after questioning 7 defense witnesses. The defendant declined to testify. With the jury out of the courtroom, prosecutors announced they wanted to introduce a video of a naked Michael trying to smash a light bulb in his cell from June 2017. The courtroom erupted as defense attorney Leanne Gowdy ridiculed prosecutors for the move. As a rebuttal, the defense threatened to call a witness to tell the jury about Michael's grueling, prolonged recovery. The video was never presented as evidence. Since the defense rested on a Friday, the jurors would need to wait until Monday to consider their decision and possibly send a man to prison for the rest of his life. Michael Keetley, the judge, and the lawyers would return to the courtroom on February the 21st, 2020 to wait for the verdict. With the jurors in the deliberation room, Keetley anxiously waited to find out his fate. The jurors would send several messages to the judge. The third note read, "It is certain that we cannot reach a unanimous verdict." The jury was brought back into the courtroom to receive further instructions before being sent back to the deliberation room. Before long, the judge received a fourth and final note. It read, "Upon further deliberation and discussion, jury has not reached a unanimous verdict. The jury is hung. This is not going to change." The judge immediately declared a mistrial. Once the jury was sent home, Michael Keetley was sent back to his jail cell, where he's lived for nearly 12 years in circumstances that likely feel like an eternity. It was later confirmed that the jury was close to acquitting Michael Keetley, but a couple of holdouts prevented that from happening. Sadly, it was the worst case scenario for everyone involved, including the victims' loved ones, and the defendant. The Michael Keetley saga is likely far from over, and many questions remain. Was Michael Keetley responsible for shooting 6 people and killing Juan and Sergio Guitron? Was Keetley even capable of carrying out the crime? Who set off the chain of events by shooting Michael Keetley for $12? If Keetley was a criminal mastermind and skilled detective, why did he go to the wrong address? Who initially sent the text message accusing Keetley of being the shooter, and was it used to steer suspicion away from someone else? Finally, should Michael Keetley be tried again? With the jury so close to acquitting Keetley the first time, many argue it would be best to move forward. Others demand justice for the victims and believe Keetley should be tried again. Michael's attorney, Leanne Gowdy, would go on to become a judge for the Florida 13th Circuit Court.